Okay, so welcome. My name is Michelle Dutrissa and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up in New South Wales. Oh golly, I've just mind blank. Okay, what we're going to be doing today is yesterday I posted a card on my blog, Butterflies and Bows, showing a floating strips technique. Now, I had seen this around a little bit, but hadn't really given it a try. I did try a couple of years ago to do another one which used press and seal, which was a floating technique, and didn't really have much success with it. So sort of watched a couple of videos on how this particular one was done, and I thought, yes, I can do that and give that a go. It's a lot easier and a lot quicker to do. So what I thought I'd do today is not the same card as I did yesterday, but just a slight different variation, a lot simplified, so then you can make this yourself as well. So let me just flip my camera. So it won't be one moment. Now remember, if you're a visitor joining today on my Facebook Live, please say hello and let me know where you're from. If I don't see any of your comments, I will get back to all comments after the video has finished. Oh no, I will upload this to my blog and to YouTube sometime over the weekend, so you can watch the replays from there if you wish. But please, I'd love you to subscribe. I'm working towards getting my 1,000 subscribers, and then I can just do YouTube videos direct. So help me out and give me a hand. Any products that you see today, I will have them linked on my blog to my store, so you can just go there to purchase them. Or otherwise, if you have any questions or anything, let me know. My shop is at michelledutrissa.stampinup.net, and you can find the shop and all the products there as well, and I will link that to my YouTube video as well. Okay, this is the card that I made yesterday. So with this, I actually did a larger piece of acetate and covered it in the strips, and so my strips were cut at an angle, and you can't really tell it so much because by the time I cut it down I lost a lot of the angle that I had, but anyway, I was quite happy with the way it came out. So we're going to give a simplified version or style of this card a go today. So let me just show you all the products that we're going to use. So I'm going to pop that one to one side. So what you will need to make this card is a piece, a card base, and I'm using thick basic white cardstock, and that's cut at 10.5 centimeters by 29.9 and scored at 14.9 centimeters. Now all these measurements will be on my blog, so you will be able to find them there to go back and to use them. Okay, so that's our cardstock, our card base. Then we also have the inside of our card insert, and what I've done here is a piece of Whisper White 9.7 centimeters by 14.1 centimeters, and I'm going to mat that on a piece which is 10 centimeters by 14.4, and that's going to be for our card insert. I then also have a mat for the front of my card because I tend to like a little bit of texture on my cardstock. So this card mat I've cut at 10 by 14.4, and I've already embossed it with the Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder. So I just like to have a little bit of texture on my mats, just to sort of contrast it a little bit, I suppose, with the flatness of the rest of the cardstock. You then need a scrap of basic white, and we're going to stamp our sentiment just as I've already done, and we're going to be cutting that out. You'll also need a butterfly. So this time I've done my little butterfly in basic black, and I'm using a smaller one than on what I used on my other card yesterday. Most important piece is a piece of acetate. Now, when I made this card yesterday, my acetate size was actually 10 by 14 centimeters, and I covered the whole piece with strips and then cut it down using the stitched rectangles, the dies, to cut out these two pieces here. But what I've done today, I've actually cut a piece of acetate. I don't know whether you can actually see that. It might be a little bit glary, and I've cut this piece at 7.2 by 10 centimeters. Now that's the finished size, so I'm not cutting today this piece with die cuts. I've just cut this piece with my trimmer, and that's what we're going to cover, and that's my finished size that I want for my panel on the front of my card. And then I have cut a whole lot of strips of cardstock. Now I've used the brights, and the colors that I've used today are Mango Melody, Bermuda Bay, Granny Apple Green, and Melon Mambo. Sorry, I had to just think what colors I've used. Now, I didn't cut these strips at an angle. I've just cut them straight today, but I've got a variety of different widths. So I've got quite narrow. Now these widths vary. I didn't want them too big because my piece of acetate or window sheet is actually not that big. It's only, you know, it's quite small. So probably the widest I've gone in all of these is about 1 centimeter. The narrowest I've gone is about 4 millimeters. Okay, so I've just cut a variety of sizes there. So that's all the bits and pieces that we're going to be using. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to take our acetate. We'll pop all those other bits and pieces to one side, and we're going to take our acetate, and using multi-purpose glue, we're going to start gluing on our strips. I'm not working in any particular order. I am going to line this up on my grid paper so I've got a nice straight line, and I'm going to start from one end and work up, and I want my strips going across. So I'm just going to pop, and I think once I get my first one down, the rest of them should be okay. Now you can put them at any angle you want. You can go slightly at a diagonal. You can even cut your strips slightly wonky like I did, did yesterday. So there's my first piece on there. Now that I've got that on there, what I'm going to do is actually slip my silicone mat underneath, and that's just going to catch any glue. And I don't want to put too much glue onto the back of my pieces because I don't want it oozing out. And we're just going to now add strips just with a little bit of glue, leaving a little bit of space in between each one, and we're just going to add our strips. So this is a little bit like Bruno's strippy card technique that he showed us last year, I think it was, and we all went crazy over. Whoops, that one's just moved. But we're just using straight pieces. It does take a little while for this glue to dry on the window sheet, so there is a little bit of movement. I'm not going to get too fussy about how straight or evenly spaced they are. Just really want to get these all down. Okay, what colour next? So as you can see, this is fairly easy. Just need a little bit of patience. My gaps in between each one isn't necessarily all evenly spaced. So I'm just going to turn this around just so then I can work from here. Okay, what colour next? And we might just be able to fit one more on, which I think will be a granny apple green. And that's going to go right at that end. Okay, so once you've done that, I'm just going to pop that to one side just so we can let that dry, and we're going to start putting the rest of our card together. So I've got my card base here, and I'm going to grab my bone folder, and we're just going to fold this in half. And with our bone folder, just make sure that that is nice and creased. I've decided to use the thick cardstock just to give this a little bit more of a, sorry, I got a bit of glue on there, just a little bit more of a sort of a solider base, not too light a card weight. I wanted to have it nice and firm. Okay, so on the front there, now I always do like to mat my cards, whether I use a different color underneath it and have this one as my card front, but I just like either a different color or a little bit of texture. Just helps to sort of highlight your work. So we're just going to pop some multi-purpose glue on the back of our mat, and as I said, I ran that through the Tasteful textile embossing folder just to give us some nice texture and some nice contrast. So by using the multi-purpose glue, we can slip that all on, press that down. At this point, we're just going to grab our card insert and the mat that I've cut. Pop some more adhesive on the back. So what has everybody been up to today? Must admit, I haven't been outside as yet. It's been a bit cool around here in the Southern Highlands. I keep hoping that one day we might even get a little bit of snow. Don't think it's going to get quite cold enough though. We've been close, but not quite yet. Okay, so once you've adhered those two together, what we should have done even before we adhered those together, but I can do it now before I put it inside the card. I'm just going to stamp a sentiment. Now the sentiments that I'm using is from the Best Year stamp set. I really like these. It's got some really good varieties. It's got thank you and happy Father's Day. It's got happy birthday, warmest wishes for Christmas, hip hip hooray. But what they've done is they've done one that you can use on the front of your card and one that you can use on the back. So this one here, which I'm using, which is happy birthday to you, on the inside you've got this coordinating stamp here saying wishing you your best year yet, which is in the same font as the happy birthday to you. So the happy birthday to you can go on the front of the card, and as I've done with this card here, I've just added the wishing you your best year yet on the inside. So we're going to do that again today, and I'm going to use Melon Mambo. Don't tend to use these colours very often, so it's actually quite good to pull them out and to use them. And we're just going to stamp that on the corner, right hand side corner here, making sure we've just lined all that up. Just hold that down for a few seconds just to let that ink settle on our cardstock. And there we are. So that's really that, and the sentiment at the front, which I've already pre-stamped, is really all the stamping we're doing. So we're going to now adhere this to the inside of our card. Hopefully while we're doing all of this, our strips are all nicely drying. Hi Shelley, how are you? Thank you for joining me today. Okay, so we're just going to pop that on the inside. Just hold that down for a little bit just to make sure that that's all. Card still wants to try to stick to the back. I'll fix it up later on. Okay. So as I said before, I've pre-stamped my sentiment, and all I've used here, I've used the Memento Tuxedo Black, and I'm just going to get a pair of scissors to cut this out. Now the other day I freehand cut around my sentiment. This time I've just actually drawn very faintly with a lead pencil all the way around it, just to give me an idea of where I want to go. So I'm just going to cut, if I can, almost directly onto those lines or just on the inside of it. Now, unlike the one yesterday, I cut curves around all of these. I want this one here to be fairly straight, just basically because the font is. And then around the rest of the font where we've got the lovely script, I'm going to curve it. So I'm just going to cut the areas that I want nice and straight first. And I'm just going to cut a little bit of this excess cardstock away. Now, as I said last week, if you keep your cards or your scissors still and just move your cardstock, you should find that you can get some nice curves. While you're cutting. Also too, a good tip is if you use a pair of nail scissors, you know, you used to be able to buy the curved nail scissors. You can get a pair of those which are fairly sharp and fine. They're really great for cutting curves as well, because it's already got a slight curve in there in the scissors itself. So that's another good way of cutting things with a lot of curve. And there we go, there's our sentiment. And I'm just going to grab a rubber, make sure it's nice and clean, and just remove any of the pencil marks that could be around those edges. Okay, and I had a little bit of glue on the back of my card here, and I'm just going to use the rubber just to remove that. If you go over areas which have just got a little bit of glue on it, very lightly with one of these white rubbers, because they're a very soft rubber, and in a circular type motion, you can remove some glue from those areas. So if I've got a little bit of glue right there, don't know whether you can see it, it's actually quite dark on my grid paper here. If I go over the top of that in a circular motion, it will actually pick up or make that rubber, the glue that's been on the mat on my cardstock there, will ball up and can be easily removed. But you do have to test it on a piece of scrap paper sometimes, because sometimes it can actually remove the colour if you're using a coloured piece of cardstock. So you don't want to do that. Okay, so we've got all of that done. We've got our sentiment done. I'm using one of the brilliant butterfly dies, and I'm using one of the smaller butterflies this time, and I've cut that out of some basic black. So we've got that all done. We don't need those scraps. Let's just remove those while we're working, and let's bring back in this and have a look. So there's still some glue that needs to dry, but it's dry enough now that we can trim this down. So just with a pair of scissors, just going to trim this down to the width of your acetate or window sheet underneath. Now, as I said earlier, the one I made yesterday, I did actually use dies to do this. What I did find is when I was running it through my cut and emboss machine with the dies, I had to run it through at least 2 to 3 times to make sure it had gone through all the thicknesses. And because I used like a straight edge die, the rectangles were just stitched, but they've got a straight edge. I was able to then go in and use a pair of scissors to help cut some of the areas that didn't cut. So all these bits and pieces are sticking to my scissors. I have to get some rubbing alcohol later and give my scissors blades a good clean. Okay, so let's just remove all of that so we don't get any of that stuck anywhere. I've just got a little container here I keep on my table just to put all those little tiny pieces. And there we are. There's our beautiful strips, our floating strips, or soon to be floating strips. The other product we need to use for this technique is the foam adhesive strips. And what we're going to do is we're going to take, it's not letting me into the bag, there we go. I'm going to grab one of these. Now the foam adhesive strips are pre-cut long strips of adhesive with the foam backing. It's like your dimensionals but in long straight strips. And what we're going to do is we're going to pop down on your thicker pieces, whoops, not on that side of the strips, we're going to turn it over to the back onto your window sheet, and we're going to adhere strips of adhesive foam onto the back. You don't need to put too many, we're just placing it in a few places, and it's all going to be hidden behind those larger strips that we've cut and adhered to our window sheet. And I'm just going to pop this one here, just on here. Okay, so hi Linny. Hello Joy, how are you? Where are you from, Joy? Glad you could join us today. So once we've done that, we're going to peel the backing off our foam adhesive strips. And then we're going to center this as best we can on our card front. Just give that a little bit of a push down just to make sure that's all well and truly adhered. Now what you can do before you cut your butterfly out, you can use the adhesive sheets and place it onto the back of your cardstock before running it through your cut and emboss machine with your die. But today I was sort of just playing around and cut this out and then decided, yes, I'll just go ahead and use it. So I haven't got any adhesive sheet on this, but I am just going to pop a little bit of my multi-purpose glue on it. Now I don't want to make too big amount of glue onto this because we don't want it to ooze, so I'm just using just a tiny amount and just putting it into a few areas where hopefully it will all be hidden. Of course, it would make it a lot easier if I did have adhesive sheets on here. That's okay. I'm just going to use a pair of tweezers and we're just going to position this somewhere on our card, and I just think I want it just about there. Just hold that down just for a little bit, just to make sure that that has adhered to the cardstock underneath. You could put like a block on top of that if you want to, just to hold that down. We'll just leave that there sitting there for a moment, and we're going to pop some, no, we're not going to pop any dimensionals onto that. You could pop dimensionals, but I've decided no, I'm not going to. I'm just going to adhere this because I've got already enough height. I don't like making these too high when we're going into the mail, to the post. So we've just got to work out where this is going to get positioned. My idea originally was to go across the butterfly, but my butterfly I used yesterday was a lot bigger. So what I might do is actually trim this down a little bit, just see if I can make it a little bit finer. So I'm just going to run around this again and just cut this a little bit closer to the stamping. I do want it to sit on the butterfly, so I don't want it sort of covering that butterfly up too much. Okay, so that's a little bit finer, and I think that's going to look a bit better. Okay, so I'm just going to pop some adhesive underneath that. Again, try not to put on too much adhesive on there because we don't want it to ooze out. And just add that just like that. And that is our card for today. So there's the card that I made yesterday using the floaty strips technique, and there's a simpler variation today. I might just put a little bit of glue underneath that, and the easiest way actually to do that is if you get a strip of cardstock, a bit of a scrap, put a little bit of glue on the end there and just thin it out. And what you can do is just lift that up and just run that underneath your die, and then just hold that down for a second just to let that settle. That's probably one of the easiest ways I find to add a bit extra glue, and if you use a sort of something long, you can actually get in to a certain quite a distance underneath. So there's a quick little tip for you. So again, there's our cards. So that's the one I made for yesterday, which is I made the strips on a larger piece of window sheet and then cut it down to the size I wanted using the stitched rectangular dies. And this one for today, where I've just cut my window sheet just with using my trimmer, and again, and just keeping it as one piece, but still quite effective. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope you give it a go. That's our cards for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Love you to join me again next week as we have a look at another type of card, another style of card, or another different technique maybe. So have a lovely day, have a lovely weekend, and I'll catch up with you later. Bye for now.